Hello, everyone. Welcome again to Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing, the Fawn Pod, the Fawncast. We got the birthday boy in the house today, Joey, and
Hello.
myself. This is Cody. We're talking about all things long, round,
Long and strong and down to get the friction on.
with a bunch of spikes in them. Worms.
Oh, hey.
Shout out to AMC's popcorn buckets. Uh, Talking about Dune
Get a little
today.
extra protein topping on that popcorn.
There you go.
Whoa. We just started.
We did. Oh my gosh. We're going to be talking about the classic Dune today, 1984 version, in a moment here, as we have an installment of our running series, Classic or Crap
Gonna
today.
say classic might be a premature term to use for this movie, but we'll talk about that.
Ooh. All right. Well, let's head over to Mr. Birthday Boy here. Joe, what have you been up to?
Getting older and suffering as a result of it. But other than that, we're kind of talking before recording. I've mentioned this, I think, the past couple episodes I've been on. I'm still playing The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and it's fun, but also incredibly frustrating. Um, but the only other thing I really wanted to mention is we rewatched a movie the other night that I had seen before, but it had been a few years called The Nice Guys. Have you ever seen that movie with Russell
Uh,
Crowe and Ryan Gosling?
no, I have not.
So I will say for anyone listening, if you enjoyed Ryan Gosling being funny in Barbie, you should check out The Nice Guys. Um, I mean, it's a different movie tonally. It's like a noir comedy, kind of like a film noir detective movie with a lot of comedic elements set in the 1970s.
Okay.
Co-starring Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe in what is possibly Russell Crowe's best role.
Whoa.
Um, it's fat Russell Crowe, which I'm honestly not sure if he gained weight for this role or if he just happened to have put some pounds on.
Maybe it's a for the orgy.
But oh Zeus. But yeah, it's like a buddy cop movie, but a little bit more mature. It was written and directed by Shane Black, who
Hmm.
also did Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which was sort of Robert Downey Jr.'s comeback movie. I think he actually also wrote at least the first two Lethal Weapon movies.
Mm-hmm.
He also directed Iron Man 3, which I know was hugely divisive when we ranked of the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a really fun movie. Highly recommend. Like I said, Ryan Gosling is hilarious and great in it. And hard to beat Fat Russell Crowe.
Hard to beat Fat Russell
But
Crowe.
that's really all I wanted to mention. What about you, Cody?
Oh boy, I've been busy this week, but I guess a couple things I've been up to is I'm still playing the same two games I've been playing through, which is Fire Emblem Engage, which I probably think I'm about three-quarters through now, and I've also been playing
I
Alan
believe
Wake.
if I believe you're saying it wrong, especially in light of one of the actors in the movie we're going to discuss recently. I believe it's Fire Emblem Engage.
Fire Emblem, Walk with Me. Oh,
Oh,
there we go. That ties in. Um, Yeah, just been playing those. We're gonna have a Classic or Crap on Alan Wake coming up here as well. Uh, Justin and I had previously reviewed some of the Fire Emblem games a while back in an episode. So if you want to check out his thoughts on that one and our
don't
thoughts
listen to
on
any
some other
Justin
ones,
episodes.
you're welcome to do that also. And then also just want to do a quick shout out to a book I started, my March book. I'm a little ahead of schedule here at the moment. My book a month I'm trying to do this year with my wife, but I started a book called the Kaiju Appreciation Society, which I bought at Barnes and Noble when they were closing the store down and selling stuff off cheap. And it's hilarious so far. I'm like six or seven chapters in, and like I have notably laughed actually out loud like three or four times in the book, several times while my wife was sleeping and woke her up and got yelled at for it. But it is hilarious so far. The writing is just really witty. It's an interesting plot so far, basically. It's not really too spoilery because we're only like a fifth of the way through the book, but essentially this guy down on his luck gets hired to work a mysterious job by a person he met once upon a time, and they go to Greenland, and somehow there is like a dimensional doorway to a different Earth that they go through where Greenland's a jungle, and they just have seen their first giant creatures, the kaiju.
Yeah.
So I don't know where it's going. I don't know if it's going to be like comedic or if it's going to turn dark or where the plot of this actually goes, but I'm really enjoying it so far through the first 6 or 7 chapters. So
Cool. That sounds interesting.
yeah, it's pretty fun so far. So okay, well, let's jump into this today. Just the two of us here today, and we're going to talk about Dune. This is the 1984 Dune, to be clear again, because there have been a couple Dunes, including the upcoming Dune 2 that comes out here in several weeks. Part of the motivation for why we
Like
went back to look at
two
this one.
weeks. It's coming out, coming in fast.
It is. It's going to worm its way right into your life,
Oh, hey.
and we have seen Dune Part 1, the new one, although I don't think we ever did a recording on that one or discussed it at much length here. Apparently, there was also a TV miniseries, which I have not seen.
Children of Dune.
I don't know, it was like 2000, I think maybe it came out somewhere around there. Um, and I don't know how long it was, but I did not see a lot of places really mention that one in much detail, so I don't know if it was
Oh,
just
I stand
not.
corrected. I guess there was in 2000 there was a Dune miniseries, and then I believe there was subsequently a sequel, Children of Dune.
Okay. So I don't know. I don't know if that one was bad or people just don't review it as much or what. I haven't seen it. Can't comment on it. There we go.
Agree.
Uh, what?
I said agree. I also
Oh,
have not
yes.
seen it and cannot comment on it.
Yes. All right, so Dune 1984. We thought this would be a fun one again for Classic or Crap to go back and take a look at with the impending release here of the new part two coming up. Going back to
Quick,
this one.
quick note, they did actually re-release this version in theaters this very weekend to
Oh,
celebrate its
really?
40th anniversary.
Oh, that I did not
And
know.
and probably also to capitalize on the fact that part two of the newer version is coming out.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. This strikes me as, I'll get to some ratings here in a second, but this strikes me as a movie that people probably either have like fond memories of from their childhood or haven't seen or watched later in life and they're like, eh, but I don't know if that's positively true or not. That's just kind of the impression I get watching this. Kind of reminds me of some of those 80s movies that like if you just didn't catch on the first run, maybe you don't get to know. But with the new one coming out, it's a little more universal, I guess, than some of those other ones.
Yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from, and I think that is probably true. I mean, I think this one is also kind of complicated in multiple ways by the David Lynch of it all.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there are people that really love this version, but I think I've read a few reactions where people say that you basically have to think of it as a David Lynch movie and not as a adaptation of Dune. And I mean, that's something we could probably talk more about, but
Yeah. I could see that for sure. All right, just got three quick stats on this. Perfect one for us to consider here for classic or crap. IMDb, we have a rating of 6.3 for this movie overall. Rotten Tomatoes has a 37,
oh,
and Metacritic has a 41 on this movie. So I don't think we've ever, to my remembrance, at least formally established a criteria cutoff for classic versus crap. We've kind of left that up to the host, but um, if you're looking at like a strict school grading scale, 60% being the D fail line or whatever you want to count here, we have IMDb would be like a D minus, and Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic would both be failing grades on this one. So we'll see what we have to say
not,
on this.
not looking good.
Yeah, well, apparently some people got some issues with this one. Okay, let's jump into a couple things here. As Joe mentioned already, this was a David Lynch project. He was the director and also partial screenplay writer, along with Frank Herbert, who wrote the original Dune novels. Um, I don't know a ton about Frank Herbert other than the fact that he is the Dune author, but I partially would think it would be fun to watch he and David Lynch together attempting to write a screenplay on this. Like anybody who had to sit with David Lynch and coexist to create a screenplay would be an interesting experience, I would think.
I think that's probably true. I mean, David Lynch is kind of legendarily a singular mind unto himself. I thought it was interesting. I believe this is only his third film, at least
Okay.
his third feature film after, yeah, 1977's Eraserhead, which is like
Fucking weird.
really, really way out there. And then 1980's The Elephant Man, which is probably the most mainstream of his movies. I believe it was pretty universally acclaimed. I could be making this up, but I think it was at least nominated for some Oscars and other major awards. But it's weird to me that he came to this movie, Dune, after The Elephant Man. It just feels like such a completely different type of story, and I mean, it is a completely different genre.
Yeah. Other things here, just as we jump in, Joe and I had mentioned before we hopped on the air today as well. There's a couple different cuts of this movie with some different footage. There's an extended release, a theatrical release. I was reading something else that said, I don't know where I read this at. Now I don't have the source, but something like there were even like different cuts sent to theaters
Oh, I haven't heard
in some
that. That's
cases.
interesting.
Um,
I do know that David Lynch has actually tried to disown this movie because he did not have final cut on it.
hmm,
And I know that I'm not sure if the extended cut that exists is a director's cut, or
okay.
I don't know how involved he was in that. I actually have a quote from him. Dune, wait, ooh, should I do it in my David Lynch impression voice?
Oh, if you have one, please.
Dune is a Dune is a huge, gigantic sadness in my life. I did not have final cut on that film. Total creative control. I didn't have it. He has a very high pitched voice. If you've never heard David Lynch talk, the film is not the film I would have made had I had final control. It's a bit of a sadness. So he apparently, it sounds like the studio kind of took the movie away from him, and
Hmm.
he did not have final cut, and therefore was not a fan of the result. But I still feel like his fingerprints are all over this movie.
Yes, for sure. So they took, so you're saying basically they kind of remolded what he had put together to create this
Yeah,
final version. Um, yeah, that's interesting. I'm seeing a lot of rumors here that there's like a 4 hour cut, a 6 hour cut. Some of that's not true. People are arguing, but 2022, David Lynch said he wants his version to be released. So do we have to start a Lynch cut
release the Lynch
campaign?
cut.
Release the Lynch
Oh,
cut.
I'm sure that has probably existed for years. Like people have probably been calling for that for decades.
Yeah, but
It's just that
also
David Lynch's fans are probably much more sad and introverted than Zack Snyder's fans. So
that's probably true. We want the Lynch cut, but also interspersed with shots of the baby from Eraserhead.
no,
Yeah, put that back in your mind. There you go.
I like
Okay,
it.
let's get into the cast
Oh
of
boy,
this. Yeah, and I
it is
guess
stacked.
it is a stacked cast. So I guess let's take these one at a time, but we'll do it briefly here. And if you have any comments on performances, we can throw these out as well. And I also noted who plays this character in the newer version, the updated version. How do you say? Is it Villeneuve?
I have heard it pronounced a few ways. I say Villeneuve
Villeneuve.
or Villeneuve, but
Okay, the newer version. All right, we'll start with the star of the show here, Paul Atreides. This is Kyle MacLachlan, and I already can't take this movie seriously.
womp
This is Timothy Chalamet's
womp.
character in the newer version. How do you think Kyle did in this one?
I really love Kyle MacLachlan, but he is just kind of Kyle MacLachlan in everything that he's in.
Yeah,
He has this like, I mean, so this is something that I guess was a bit controversial is that he in the novel Paul is supposed to be a teenager, and I mean even though, I don't know how old Kyle was at this point, I would guess in his 20s,
yeah,
but he does not at all feel like a teenager. He feels like someone who's like probably in his like mid 20s. Um But yeah, I like him in general. I feel like his sort of thing is this kind of weird, wide-eyed optimism, which is, yeah, like it kind of carries through. Like Twin Peaks is one of my favorite, not just TV shows, but probably things of all time. And Paul Atreides feels very much like Agent Dale Cooper. Like he just kind of like is who he is, and I don't know that he really displays much range in any of his roles, but I do like what he does.
That's very fair. I think yes, he does seem like who's the oh, you're gonna kill me, but who is the person in Twin Peaks he's always talking to on the recorder?
Diane,
Diane, yeah. Yeah, it seems like you could add those in here for all of the voiceover parts, which I'll talk about later, but
Diane, it's 11:15 a.m. I'm now riding a sandworm.
sandworming, yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah, it was just an odd choice. Again, this is one of many instances probably in this film that would have been more interesting to have watched this before I ever knew about Twin Peaks, because now I can
Yeah.
only see him as Twin Peaks. So, but anyway. All right, let's see. Next up here, Kenneth McMillan playing Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. This is Stellan Skarsgård, very different looking character in the newer
Oh
version.
boy.
What'd you
Oh
think of Mr.
boy.
Pussface here?
Oh,
Drain my pus.
oh, it's so gross.
Drain my pus.
I feel like this is, I mean, Baron Harkonnen, I think, is one of the more problematic elements of this movie in a few ways. Certainly one of the things that is most different from the novel, at least in my understanding. I do think, as far as a performance goes, I feel like he probably gave David Lynch exactly what he wanted.
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, I can't really fault the actor for that. Like he is this very just like disgusting, grotesque, perverse, like over the top, just maniac. And I mean, this entire character, like as portrayed in this movie, just you could just tell that it came straight from David Lynch. I mean, the whole, I don't know if we want to talk about, well, you mentioned the pus thing, like
Yeah.
that's not a thing from the novel. That's definitely like there are a lot of things which we could talk more about later. There are a lot of elements in this movie that are just like gross and grotesque, and that is David Lynch just trying to add some shock value for whatever reason. Like it has no basis in the source material. I think the first time we meet Baron Harkonnen, he has someone like using a needle to drain his face pustules or so. It's just so
Yeah.
gross. What did you think about this guy?
Well, I thought I had read that the original copies of the book Dune, when you opened them, there was a pus thing that broke open on you. And
Eh,
just kidding.
eh.
No, he was, I mean, it's kind of a one-dimensional character. He's kind of just an evil
Yeah,
guy who's whatever. And I actually thought it was pretty cool how he kind of flew around very, very, very rigidly. But I actually thought the flying, actually, I thought looked pretty
yeah.
decent. I saw some other sites criticize that, but I thought it looked
Well, that, I
okay
mean,
for.
that's another difference from the book. Like in the book, the character is like very super morbidly obese and uses a technology called suspensor belts
Ooh.
in order to help him walk, but he's like not flying around. It's literally just like he's so fat that his body can't carry his own weight, so he uses these things to help support that weight.
Hmm.
Whereas in this movie, he's just like floating around like a balloon.
Floating around like a balloon.
I will say, like, I did think that looked cool visually. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I thought it looked okay. I mean, you gotta. I know I saw some criticism from if it was Roger Ebert I was reading a review by or somebody as well, but you gotta kind of think of like 84 here. We're like well into Star Wars run already. Star Trek's been around for a few iterations here, and so I don't know, they were doing a lot of comparing to that, but I thought that part looked okay. Even the face makeup I thought looked pretty good.
Yeah, I mean it even today, and I should say that I watched this movie on a 4K ultra high definition disc from Arrow Video.
Ooh,
So if anyone was going to see all the, all the gory details or questionable special effects, it would be on the version I saw. And I agree. I thought the face makeup looked good. It definitely looks really disgusting, so it does the job that it's supposed to be doing.
I watched this on a DVD on a
What
small
is
TV
that?
in my bedroom because my new big TV does not hook up to DVDs anymore. So I had to go into the bedroom to watch this on a
What do you mean
smaller
it doesn't hook up
TV.
to DVDs anymore?
It doesn't have component cable spots. I
Buy
can't.
a Blu-ray player that or a 4K player that has an
Yeah,
HDMI output and you can put a DVD in it.
listen, I'm just telling you what I have at the moment and where I watched it. So I ended up watching it on a smaller TV in the bedroom, which then formatted, chopped off the left and the right to
Oh
make it
boy.
fit. And then because it was widescreen, it chopped off the top and the.
So you got to see like a quarter of the movie.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing.
I
But
mean, honestly, that sounds like it's probably the optimal viewing setup for this movie. So,
you may have caught some things we didn't catch, but it was fun. All right, let's go back to the Atreides family because I skipped over here. Let's talk about Papa Duke Leto Atreides, Jorgen Prochnow. This is Oscar
say
Isaac's
that 10
role
times
in the
fast.
future movie. I was trying to figure out why I knew this guy for the longest time, and then I
Das
finally
Boot.
had to Google it's the guy from Das Boot. Yes, that's exactly what it was. So,
I feel like he also has like I feel like he's an actor who's probably been a villain in random things. Oh, he's in Beverly Hills Cop 2. He's in The Mouth of Madness, which is a great
ooh, I
movie.
love that movie.
Yeah, so I feel like he is one of those actors who's just like, oh, it's that guy.
Yes, there were a couple of those in here, I thought.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot to say on this guy. He did okay, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have a huge role in the movie. He is definitely no Spice Daddy Oscar Isaac,
Spice
but
Daddy.
I thought he was decent enough for the role that he has.
It's kind of fun too, since this is more or less the same movie that's being made right now in two parts. There's a lot of websites comparing the two people who played their same role, and picking which one they
Yeah.
thought did better. So Oscar Isaac actually lost on one of the sites I was on to this guy. So
Boo.
we'll see. All right, let's talk about Mama Lady Jessica here, Francesca Annis, and this is Rebecca Ferguson's character now. What'd you think of Mama?
Uh, She was all right.
My husband died. Meh.
She's good, good at getting spit on. I don't know.
That was so
It
gross.
was so gross. It's so
Oh, gross.
unnecessary. Oh my God. Like why that is definitely not a thing in the book.
So that was
Anyway,
it was weirder too because wasn't it the Baron that spit on her?
yeah.
But then a different guy like later like moves the spit around and
Is
like
like
paints her
playing with the
face with the
spit.
spit.
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah, the Baron's literally like, I want to spit on your face at least once. And then just does it for some reason. There are some
It
choices made in this movie.
it's pretty
Anyway,
gross.
I thought Lady Jessica was like pretty good. I
Yeah.
honestly didn't really have any strong feelings one way or the other.
Yeah, I'd agree. All right, sticking with House Atreides here, I will admit I didn't know till he popped up on screen. Let's talk about Sir Patrick Stewart as Gurney Halleck,
Ah,
later
Sir
later
Patrick
redone by
Stewart.
Josh Brolin.
I have to admit, I think I prefer Sir Patrick's version.
Sir Patrick, how can you not?
I mean, I might be biased. I love Patrick Stewart. Star Trek: The Next Generation is one of my favorite shows. But I thought he was great here. I mean, he's arguably one of the greatest actors of our time. I think, I mean, honestly, the reason I do say that I feel like I mean, Josh Brolin is a good actor, but I feel like
Yep.
there's kind of a warmth to Sir Patrick Stewart's character here.
Yeah.
Um, that is, I just can't even really picture Josh Brolin like having that aspect to his performance. Um,
I mean, he does. It seems like Patrick Stewart like blows when he acts.
yeah,
Like you
yeah.
know where
There's
he's
just
at on
like
the scene, and like he just seems like he's somehow a stage actor who translates to movies that not everybody
yeah,
else does.
there is just something about him, but also just like I mean, he's really not in it a whole lot, but you
Yep.
feel like when he's reunited with Paul later on after he assumes he's been killed, like I believe that moment. Like it he sells the fact that these characters have had a long-standing relationship and that he was like part of the family. Um Also, I have to say, I feel like Sir Patrick Stewart, he must have been in his early 40s here. I feel like he looked the same in this movie that he did up until like 2010 or like maybe even later. I feel like it's just been the past few years that he started to actually look older.
Doesn't he have like longer hair on the sides and the back in this one?
Yeah, at least I think that's when they're
He's more like Hulk
reunited.
Hogan here.
I think it's later. I could be wrong. Maybe he has it earlier too, but definitely once they're reunited later on, he has the just like long fringe around his head.
Oh
What
yeah.
did you think about his performance though?
No, I thought he was tipping my hand slightly here, but I thought he was one of the better parts of the movie, especially from the acting standpoint.
Yeah.
You're right, he's not in it a ton, but I like the fact that he did come back towards the end and has another part. It was also weird to watch this movie. This is neither here nor there, but like I watched this with my wife and I was like, well, I guess we're spoiling like the next movie that's coming out because I hadn't seen this before. And she saw it a long time ago and she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, this is presumably the same plot as the new movie, right? More or less. Which we'll talk about that as well here. But yeah, yeah, okay. All right, let's keep it moving here. Some more of our main characters. This is another one in House Atreides. This is Duncan Idaho, played by Richard Jordan. This is another friend slash trainer, I think. This is Jason Momoa's character in the newer version. Smaller role. I don't know this actor as well, I don't think. Not as much to say from me here.
Yeah, I honestly don't really have much to say about this character at all. I'm also not really familiar with the actor. I felt like he's barely in the movie. So,
All
yeah,
right,
I don't know.
we'll just keep it going here. All right, this is a funner one though. What did you think of Peter DeVry's Brad Dourif's character in this one, played by David Dalmakian in the new version? This was like
The Mentat, the
yeah,
evil Mentat.
how dare you say that word?
Uh, I mean, Brad Dourif is just great at being creepy and evil. I
Fact.
I will say I felt like his makeup, like kind of the character design for the Mentats in general in this movie was a little ridiculous and silly looking.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's Greenwood Wormtongue. Like he's just so good at being like just a slimy, creepy character. So I thought he was good in that regard.
Yes, this is another example of like somebody that I know so well from one role that I have a hard time seeing them as a different role here, and you just nailed it from Lord of the Rings. So
Yeah. I mean, also super creepy in an episode of the X-Files, I think in like the first season.
okay. Um, yeah. Let's do a couple more here. This one I didn't put on my list, but I'm going to add it in here because I didn't recognize him for a little bit. What do you think of Dean Stockwell as the doctor?
You mean Al?
Yeah.
Let's ask Ziggy what it thinks. No, I thought he was good.
That was actually one of the better performances too, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought he was really good. I mean, I must have known he was in it, but I kind of forgot by the time I got around to watching it. I mean, obviously, I'm sure we both know him mostly from Quantum Leap.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I agree though. I thought he gave one of the better performances. I feel like there were a couple actors who felt like they were really trying, like he and Sir Patrick Stewart being among them. And then I feel like there were other actors who felt like they were in a weird campy movie. But yeah, he was definitely trying, and I think it worked pretty well for the most part.
All right, I just got a few more here. I'm going to switch off the family. We're going to head over to, what did you think of, I don't know if you say this is Cyan Phillips as Reverend Mother Mohayam. This is Charlotte Rampling's character in the new one, but kind of in general, maybe you could even summarize like that whole position of like what exactly that type of person is. I don't know if that's a class in the society or
The
a race.
Bene
I'm not sure.
Gesserit.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, they're kind of like a secret society who I think I should say I have not read the books. I've tried to read the first novel and would like to someday, but it's very dense and kind of hard to read.
Hmm.
But my understanding is that the Bene Gesserit are kind of a secretive order who the powerful players in the galaxy turn to for guidance, but they're also sort of acting of their own accord and like secretly trying to control the universe and the fates of everyone therein. Um, as far as this specific actress, I thought she was pretty good. I thought she did a good job of playing again the role that she was given to play. But I mean, I honestly I didn't really have a ton of strong feelings about her one way or the other.
Yeah, I just think in general the role those characters were playing, yeah, in the society was just kind of a creepy vibe from them, and like people seem to put a lot of value into this society, even though they have some oddly questionable procedures, like putting your hand in the box.
Yeah.
Put your hand in the box.
No male has ever put his hand in the box.
Heyo. We
Hey,
know what's going on there.
pain.
Heyo, heyo, hey, hey. All right. Last couple here. Let's go to Sean Young, of course, as Chani. Is it Chani from the Fremen? This is the love interest
It's
in
weird.
Zendaya.
I feel like they pronounce it Johnny in this movie,
Johnny,
but yeah, um,
Johnny.
sh she is barely in the movie.
Just like
Like
Zendaya.
I was shocked by how small her role was in this,
Yeah,
especially I guess I don't know where she was at in her career at this point, but I feel like she became a pretty big star for at least a few years in the 80s.
for sure.
I mean, Blade Runner and
She was
a
like the
few
it
other
girl for a
things.
little bit.
Yeah. But yeah, I was really surprised. I I almost feel like I can't judge her performance because she's in it for so little time. And when she's on screen, she really is just there to like have Paul fall in love with her.
Super fast.
But there's like no depth or development to that relationship at all.
Yeah. She's kind of
So
shown through like weird memory montages, or it's
yeah.
hard to even describe how that works, but it was kind of crazy. I think Zendaya had more screen time. I think maybe they souped up this a little bit in the newer one.
Yeah, well, I mean, from my understanding in the novel, I mean, she is a major character. Like she's
Okay.
kind of responsible for Paul's journey with the Fremen. I mean, I would say Zendaya probably had more screen time as the character in Dune Part One than Sean Young does in this entire movie.
That's a good
And
point.
I believe her role is going to be much, much, much larger in Part Two. So it is kind of weird.
All right. And last big one I have, wink wink, is Everett
Jack
McGill,
Nance. Oh,
Stilgar, leader of the Fremen. This is
you mean
Javier
Big Ed
Bardem's
Hurley?
character. What's that?
Big Ed Hurley?
Big Ed Hurley, yeah. This guy will never go on to do anything with David Lynch again, so
I actually really liked him. Like I was kind of surprised because I think the only other thing I've seen him in was Twin Peaks, in which he plays Big Ed Hurley. And it's a very different character. And I thought he did really well in this role as kind of the kind of tough, stoic leader of the
ugh.
Fremen. What did you
Yeah,
think?
no, I'd agree. I thought this guy also did a pretty good job. I was convinced I must know this guy from something more than just Twin Peaks, but man, I looked at his IMDb profile, and if it was something very minor at some point here and there. This guy seems to have just really made his mark there in Twin Peaks, as far as I can
Yeah.
tell.
I mean, I have to note just being as a Twin Peaks fan that I counted five actors in this movie who also appear in Twin Peaks.
Oh, okay. Care to give us the list?
I mean, Kyle MacLachlan and Everett McGill, obviously.
Yeah.
Also, Jack Nance, who plays Yankin Nefud,
Bless you.
who is like one of the Harkonnen's little cronies.
Oh yeah, okay.
He plays Pete Martell in Twin Peaks, who is
Hmm.
maybe my favorite character on that show.
Really?
He's the guy who most famously says, "There's a fish in the percolator." Anyway,
Oh, this guy. Okay.
yeah. Also Alicia Witt, who is a literal child in this movie. Uh, she also is still a child in Twin Peaks, but a little bit older. But she plays Elia Atreides, Paul's super creepy little sister toward the end.
Absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, so weird. And then David Lynch himself has a cameo as one of the workers on one of the spice harvesting machines,
Oh,
and
really?
he plays Agent Gordon Cole in Twin Peaks.
Oh, I don't even know if I was aware of that, but
Mm,
I looked up the little girl and I was like, it's Alicia Witt. She was like another kind of it girl for a little while around the
definitely had a crush on her in the 90s at some point.
yeah. She's another one though. I looked up her IMDb and I was like, wow, I don't know this person for as much as I thought I would know her for as hot as her flame burned for a little while
Yeah,
there.
I realized that the thing I developed a crush on her in was I think it was a 1998 stoner comedy called Bongwater, which
Jesus.
I don't know how. I think I saw it because Jack Black was in it. It was like one of his early roles.
Okay.
And she was a cute girl in that movie.
Not urban legend.
Not have not seen that.
You don't like scary stuff.
Also, you didn't mention Virginia Madsen.
Go ahead.
She's in this movie.
No,
She's the
she's
first
not.
she's the first face we see in this movie. She kind of dumps a bunch of exposition on us at the
Boy, does
beginning
she.
about how the universe works and the spice and all the things.
But also, does she?
Eh,
About that.
what
All right,
she
last two I had here, just as minor ones I put on there. Thufir Hawat, if I'm saying that correct. Freddie Jones's character, and then
what
also we also have he was the guy with the crazy hair, and then also Sting. We got to mention Sting in here also. How great
is
was Sting in
a
this movie?
he shone like a desert rose.
Oh, yeah, right.
Every little
Oh,
thing he does is magic.
it's true.
I
It's
thought
it's true.
he you could sure tell that he is not an actor.
He seemed to be having more fun than most people in this movie, though.
That's true. Honestly, I can't really shit on him.
He
I
only
feel
hit,
like he worked for the like crazy
yeah.
unhinged nature of the character that he's playing.
He had like 10 scenes that added up to like 2 minutes. Not even
Yeah.
probably.
Most of which he spent being really excited about killing people.
But he was looking good. He was ripped. He was wide-eyed. He had good, crazy looking hair.
Yeah.
It was fun to see him in there, I thought. That was a fun one for me because I have mentioned many times on the podcast I collect Funko Pops, and I had always seen Sting listed online and in stores. I've seen him also with this weird FEYD name, and I was like, "Who the fuck is this? I don't even know who this is." Like in the character. So now I know it's Fade
Soon to be
and
played by Elvis in Dune Part 2.
Presley.
What's his face? Austin Butler, who played Elvis in the movie Elvis,
Oh,
is playing this character in Dune Part 2,
oh,
and the early reviews are saying that it's like an amazing performance.
they should have gotten the wrestler Sting for this one.
Is he still alive?
Are you joking right now?
I am joking right now.
Literally punch you through this camera.
I'm so sorry.
They could have got Sting to reprise his role, actually. That also would have been fun.
I feel like he's probably still in pretty good shape. He could have probably pulled it off.
Probably. I mean, he just holds that tantric position as
All
long as he
the
can. So,
tantric energy.
all right. Last note before we get into positive negatives, we should point out that this has a legendary, count it legendary soundtrack from Toto
Oh, it
with a
sure does.
little help from Brian Eno on one theme here as well. Wow. What'd you think of the Toto musical score on this?
I mean, it's not quite as good as Queen's score for Flash Gordon, which I honestly kind of felt like they were maybe going for, but I liked it. I mean, this is going to bleed into the pros and cons discussion, but
Yeah, please. Bleed.
um, I was honestly starting to lose a little bit of interest until we got to the big assault sequence near the end where everyone is riding sandworms, firing voice activated guns while there's just like raging heavy metal sounding guitar riffs going on in the score. It's like the most 80s thing I've ever seen, and it was incredible.
Right? Suddenly
It,
turned into heavy metal mixed with Mad Max Fury Road.
yeah, but definitely would not have worked without that score.
It was okay. I thought it was okay. It was interesting. Like I only associate Toto with those few big hits they had from the 80s for the most part. I guess that's my fault, but
Yeah,
um I did find it interesting though that it was scored by a band that was well known right after we just did our Pink Floyd podcast and they had those couple of movies that they had done the scores to as well. So it was serviceable. I didn't think it was anything memorable.
yeah. I mean, I that moment stood out to me, but I will agree that in general, it was not like it didn't knock my socks off or anything. It was again, it was not Queen doing the score for Flash Gordon, which
It also
is
seemed like,
amazing.
I could be wrong, but it also seemed like they would like do a scene and then have like a 10-second clip of music to like transition to the next scene. But I don't even recall like scenes having particularly memorable music during them at all, except maybe the one you're referencing.
There were scenes in this movie.
Well, well. All right,
Uh,
let's get into it. You got anything else? Let's go to positive negatives for this bad boy.
let's do it.
All right, let's start with
Uh,
some positives. What do you got?
I really liked the set design in this movie and a lot
Hmm.
of the costumes. It actually the sets to a large extent kind of reminded me of Flash Gordon, but in a good way. Um, but I just, especially on the 4K with Dolby Vision HDR employed, they just really popped. I thought they did a good job with that stuff.
Maybe they weren't popping. Maybe they were pockets full of water, collecting your sweat and urine so you
They're
can drink them again.
gross. And feces. And
And feces
feces.
somehow. Positive for me, I will say I mentioned the Baron flying earlier, but in general, I actually thought the special effects weren't too bad in this movie. Particularly everything with the Baron. I thought the sandworms, which like just like in the first movie of the new version here, it's like this long wait because Dune's famous for these worms. Like that's, I'm sorry, there's the whole
Yeah.
plot and everything, but like people are like, get to the fucking worm,
Show
it's
me
like
them worms.
Godzilla or something. Like we want to see the worms. I thought they were okay for the
They
most
were
part.
right.
They looked okay.
I thought it was interesting that they looked like giant dongs in this version, whereas they look like giant buttholes in the new version.
Well, yeah, fight scenes look pretty good. I thought explosions looked pretty good. I'm not as sold on the weird blocky gelatinous protective layer that
How
they were
dare
able
you?
to activate around themselves, but
How dare you?
I liked later in the movie when they were at the beginning they were like using it for defense to like train, and then later he's
Yeah.
just like, I will make myself a giant Tetris block and just throw myself at enemy soldiers.
I mean, it doesn't look great. I honestly thought it was still kind of cool though.
Weird,
Um,
it's good, cool idea.
I mean, you have to consider when this was made. This is before CGI was a thing. I think that effect was actually made by from rotoscoping, like actually hand animating over the action. So it's kind
Well,
of cool. I do agree in general, though. I thought that the effects overall were pretty good. There were some shots that did not look great, especially like there were some parts involving the sandworms, which were like super obviously blue screen. Um, but by and large, I mean, I think part of the reason I think the studio wanted this movie to be the next Star Wars, and that's probably part of why they had so many issues with David Lynch and kind of took it away from him. And I think that a lot of the special effects are at least close to being on par with like the original Star Wars movies. So in that regard, it's pretty solid.
all right. Any other positives,
Nope.
actually?
Uh, mm, no, I will say honestly, I what do you have?
Well, I just have two more on mine here.
Okay.
One we already kind of talked about this one, which was I thought some of the characters, and emphasized the word some here, were interesting in the film. Like I wanted to know who they were. I wanted to know what their motivation was, what their goals were in the film, and the acting performances were definitely adding or subtracting from that in some cases.
Yeah.
But I did think there were some interesting characters here, which is key because even if you go back to like the Star Wars trilogy, the original one, like there's characters I find more interesting in that than other characters. Um, and maybe somebody else that watches the movie has different ones they find interesting than me, so that's good. And we definitely
Yeah.
have a huge cast here as well. The other one I put down here for this is I thought the movie did a good job of building the world in terms of character relationships and how the politics of the world worked. Now, unfortunately, one of my negatives is the characters themselves are not explained very well. But I thought, like, is a setup for like, here's this world, this is what's happening here, this is what's important in this world, and here's how each of these families or people play a role in this. I thought that was explained decently well.
I can agree with that. I mean, my counterpoint to that, though, would be what I already mentioned about Virginia Madsen is that a lot of that is just like exposition dump.
True.
Um, and it's a lot of it is like right at the beginning of the movie, they just throw all this stuff at you. I mean, it is effective. I think it does help you get a grasp on, the dynamics at play, but I think it could have been handled a little more subtly. I mean, as it is done in both the novel and arguably the Denis Villeneuve film.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I guess one other kind of pro I want to mention, which is debatable, I guess, is I did enjoy the David Lynch of it all. Like, this is a really weird movie and it does not make sense on a lot of levels, but I have to give Lynch credit for trying to like make it his own vision. I do honestly kind of understand why the studio may have tried to take control away from him. Um, but it feels like he was trying to stick to his guns. In the same breath, I will say I was surprised by the extent to which it does maintain the plot of the novel as I understand it. Going into this, I was expecting it to be just like a complete disaster and like throw the actual plot out the window in favor of just being a weird fever dream, which I'm not saying that it's not a weird fever dream,
Hmm.
but it does at least retain most of the like basic story and plot of the original novel. So I have to give it credit for that.
Okay. I'm out of positives.
Me too.
All right, let's talk
All
negatives.
right. You go first.
All right, I got a list here. So, let's just start with this one because I feel like this is related to something we've already been talking about, which you have mentioned, and I maybe have too on prior podcasts we've done. There's just this idea of like how when you tell a story, and we were hammered this again in our grad classes for English writing, but the idea of like telling versus showing, and
Yeah.
a lot of those summaries that the characters give, not only with that exposition dump at the beginning, but also I'm gonna combine two here. The weird like dreamy flashes along with I hated the voiceovers in this
I
movie.
was going to ask you about that.
Oh, I hated them. There were so many, and I think they would have worked for me more if they had been from a singular character's perspective. Like if we were only getting Paul's
Yeah.
thoughts, at least that would have been better. But I mean, we're like him, and then his mom, and then the witch, and then his sister, and then here's a random rock that has a thought. I mean, it was like, oh,
And yeah, I agree. And I mean, a lot of the time it feels like it's not actually giving you any further insight than what you can see happening on screen.
Yeah.
It's like, you know,
She looks angry. No
yeah,
shit.
she's angry. Oh, he just picked that book up. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, it's literally just
It's
you're hearing a character like recognizing what is happening around them. And it's,
yes.
we can see that for ourselves.
Ugh.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that was just kind of a disaster. My understanding is that that is a convention in the book. I don't know if it's to the same extent, but you do get like, I believe you get first person narration from different characters throughout the novel.
Yeah.
Um,
Which,
but A, I would assume it's probably done much better.
yeah.
And B, just because it's a thing that's in the novel doesn't mean you have to try to put it in the movie because it really does not add anything.
All right. And it works better in the novel because you aren't seeing the character in the
Yeah.
situation. So we don't need it here.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I mean, in the Game of Thrones books, chapters will alternate, like different chapters will be told from a different character's point of view.
Sure.
And it's like in the TV show, you're not hearing that person's inner monologue throughout the series. You know, you can portray things from someone's point of view just by kind of like focusing the camera on them. You know, there are different filmic ways that you can do that without
Yes.
having just bizarre bizarre voiceover.
Well, personally, I thought this was an interesting thing that came up too, because as I'm very slowly starting to get back into editing my novel that I tried to write a couple of years back and clean it up and finish it, maybe, I have a lot of parts where I'm deciding how to do like internal dialogue as well. And like this just makes me look at it again and be like, what works and what doesn't, you know? So, what do you got? Some more negatives here.
Oh man, I mean that was a big one. The pew pew voice guns I thought were just ridiculous. That which I mean that is not from the novel. My understanding is that so
Oh,
in this
wow.
movie, like they talk about the weirding way, and it seems like it is just like using the voice, harnessing it through these weird gun things to destroy things. In the book, my understanding is that the weirding way is actually just like a martial art.
Oh,
It's like,
wow.
yeah, it's just like,
Okay, that's a
and
huge difference.
it's like much less magical. It's more just like being so in tune with your body and the things around you that they're able to like move and fight like faster and perceive things better.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's like a huge difference. And
Yeah.
like I as much as I love the scene with the ripping guitar solo and riding the sandworms and whatnot, in general, the like voice gun things I just thought were silly.
Yes. Um, Unique, but I agree it was kind of weird, and not to mention the fact that they like suddenly mass produced like 500 out of nowhere.
Yeah,
But
well, that's the other thing. All of a sudden, there's just like they have an army and they all have them, and they're in like different shapes. And there's like a Gatling looking voiced gun and all kinds of weirdness going on.
love it.
Uh,
All right, I'm gonna throw some more here. Oh, what do I want to jump to? Let's just talk about. Probably was not fully David Lynch's fault, I will say, but let's just talk about the pacing in this movie. As far as I think we were an hour and hour and 37-ish minutes into the movie. And or maybe it was more than that. Maybe it was like 2 hours into the movie. I don't know. Regardless, and we were like, I know they're not the same, but we were still in the events of Dune Part One, which
yeah.
came out before. And I'm like, well, what? And then I got really confused because they rushed the second half of this movie so fast, which I did maybe read a little behind the scenes like that was not David Lynch's fault, but
Well, I believe they originally were going to make two movies out of this, similar to the current plan. So yeah, I think that is probably not Lynch's fault, but
I was reading here they apparently thought this was going to be the next Star Wars
yeah.
to the point where they saved all of the props and put them in a big
I
warehouse.
read that too. Also, side note, apparently apparently David Lynch had previously been offered the directing job for Return of the Jedi,
Oh, sweet Jesus.
which I would love to see that version of that
Wow.
movie.
That's the
Um,
Richard. Roger Waters' version
Oh no.
of Return of the Jedi.
I agree that the pacing is weird though. I mean, my note is to me, this movie felt longer than Dune Part One, even though it is like a half hour shorter and covers much more plot in terms of just like it covers the events of the entire first novel. And I believe I read some of the sequel, Dune Messiah, in a shorter movie than Dune Part One. But to me, it just felt longer. Like it just, especially in the first half, it just dragged. I felt like.
It was slow. I think on the movie most anticipated episodes I have talked about, like Doom Part One to me does feel very long, feels so slow.
Disagree.
But yes, I know that's okay. But this one, I don't know, it just felt like we were like so far into the movie, and I was like, well, this has already all happened. Like, what is going to happen? And then like
Well, then
25 minutes,
conversely,
maybe they take
yeah,
25 minutes to like form an army, go attack the city, take over, and like change the world. And you're like, whoa,
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. Then conversely, the end is like way too fast. Like what it
yeah.
just I mean, really, like you said, I mean, because Dune Part One basically covers up until Lady Jessica and Paul kind of get in league with the Fremen.
Hmm.
And so like Dune Part Two presumably is building up that relationship and then leading to, further conflict. I feel like once they connect with the Fremen in this movie, it's just like balls to the wall. Again, there's like the love thing with Shani where there's like no relationship there. Then at some point it's like Paul and Lady Jessica lived with the Fremen for 2 years. And but what? 2 years? We're jumping 2 years now? Like
Oh, I didn't like that.
it was just insane.
Yeah, why? Was it, I couldn't tell if that was to like explain their army being raised or if that was to like give an
So
excuse for the little sister, which
I think
still
that
didn't
ac
work.
I think that time jump actually is in the novel.
Hmm.
I don't know how it's like portrayed in the novel, but I hated it here. Like I hated
It's
the fact
just
that because
weird.
yeah, like it's already moving too fast, and then they're jumping forward 2 years in the middle of that. It was just bizarre.
Well, and it was like you finally get to potentially the most intriguing group of people in the movie, which is the Fremen,
Yeah,
because you're like, ooh, who are these people? And then they get to him and you're like, we're not gonna tell you any details. 2 years have gone
yeah,
by.
yeah. Something about water. Who knows?
Yes, yes, something about they have all the water on the desert planet. Okay. However, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What'd you think of the giant space tampons?
The who what now?
The giant space tampons.
I don't know if I even know what you're talking about.
The giant spaceships that look like tampons.
Oh, they sure were spaceships. I guess I didn't really think too much about them at all.
I was like, why is there a tampon in this movie?
Uh,
Oh, now they're bringing five tampons. Look out.
somebody's got a heavy flow this month.
Right? It's
Womp
the
womp.
Fremen. What else you got?
Uh, I mean, I have to talk about the ending,
Okay.
which is just so sudden, so sudden. Also, from what I understand, completely misses the point of the ending of the novel.
Hmm.
But the end of this movie is just like Sandworm Army, Metal Guitar Assault, Paul kills Sting, Paul becomes Paul is Jesus. The end.
Oh.
Like it literally ends with like Paul is the Messiah. Everything's gonna be awesome. Roll credits. My understanding is that Frank Herbert was questioning the idea of like heroes and Messiah figures, and the end of the novel Paul is seen by the Fremen as being like the legendary Messiah figure, but it's not a good thing. It's a bad thing
Hmm.
because they become like radically devoted to him, and the result of their belief that he is the Messiah is like a galactic. Well, it actually so probably problematically
Hmm.
a lot of ideas in the novel are heavily influenced by like Arabic cultures,
Okay.
including, I think they use the word jihad in this movie, but it's
Ooh,
definitely something in the novel. But basically, once Paul is, perceived to be the space messiah, the Fremen unleash a jihad across the galaxy, and lots of people are killed, and shit is just crazy. And you're kind of supposed to wonder, whether it was really a good thing that all this went down.
interesting.
And that is not at all present in this movie. There's like no sense of doubt or questioning at all. It's just like, yeah, the good guys won. Paul is space Jesus. Woo, everyone's gonna live happily ever after.
Water,
The end.
water.
He makes it rain.
He does. It makes it rain. That's the
So
original Make It
what
Rain.
what did you think about the ending? I mean, even not knowing the difference from the novel.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I think again, a lot of it has to do with pacing and just questions I have still, especially I guess not going back to this world because they never did the follow-up movie or movies. Um, it does seem kind of weird. I don't know, it ends. My question was like they had this emperor in the movie, which we didn't even mention him as a character, but like they defeat the emperor and then
Yeah,
but the emperor was like the political power, but just like in like real life, like he was not the power. There was like the trade guild behind him or something that wanted to spice off the planet, and they were the one who like pressured him into sending all these armies to go attack, and that's the big fight here at the end. But then I'm thinking like, okay, he won Paul, and now like the Fremen have control of the planet, but like, aren't all those other groups going to just be pissed and come attack this place next? Like, it doesn't seem like it's an ending.
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. I don't. It's There's a lot going on there, and a lot not going on there.
I guess you want to like always leave the audience questioning, like, isn't this going to happen after this? But I don't know. It was kind of weird. Um, so I got a couple negatives, sadly, about the sandworms,
Okay.
which this is maybe me trying to analyze and rip apart like a mythology of a different story, but like the worms in the movie like attack movement and they attack like vibrations through the sand and all these things. So I got two parts to this. Part one is like, why are they not, I guess because it's random or because it's built, like why would they not attack the cities or the other things on the planet here if there's like noise and movement coming from other places and it's so important to them? Just it kind of seems weird.
That's a question that is good and that I don't have an answer to.
Fair enough. And then my second question is once Paul, I guess supposedly as part of his Messiah complex training, has to go and conquer a sandworm, they like I think it's who is it here? Everett must be Everett McGill's character, like hands him this weird weapony type tool, which he goes up to a sandworm and like it turns out this tool like hooks in like for lack of a better term like the sandworm's gills more or less and he's able to
Yeah,
like climb up the sandworm and I'm like wait a second, these people who have been hiding forever like have specific tools made to like climb up a sandworm. It also seems to be like part of their history and their culture. Like, why is this group hiding in caves underground when they could like just be ruling sandworm armies and taking over the city to get their planet back?
because they didn't have the shout guns.
Just saying, maybe if they had done that a little bit earlier, they wouldn't needed the
No, I
shotguns.
That's another thing that I'm sure is explained in the books that I don't know the answer to. I mean, it's a good point. It is clearly part of their like culture, so I don't know. I
It,
don't know the answer. I
all
mean, it
right.
seems like they are choosing to just like live underground for some reason.
I'm gonna blow your mind with this next one. Are you
Oh
ready?
no,
That's
yes.
right. I want Joe Janka. How does the spice work?
It flows. What do you mean?
Spice runs everything in the galaxy.
Yeah,
Everyone needs the spice.
It's like a drug.
The
Like
spice is
it
connected to the sandworm somehow. We don't know how because they never actually tell us.
no,
Is it sandworm poop?
maybe.
Is it something from them like silk? Is it is the spice used to like power machines on other planets? Is it just purely a recreational drug that's legal in
I
some
think
planets but
I
not
mean
others?
I believe it is just a drug.
We don't know.
We don't really know.
That's kind of what I was maybe the most surprised by about any of these. Like not knowing the Dune property, even when I watched Dune Part 1, I was like, all I know is like the spice must
Ooh,
flow and spice planets and
I
blah.
have an answer for you which makes complete and total sense.
Okay, please.
The spice originated on the planet Arrakis, where it was produced deep beneath the sands. It was created in a process whereby the fungal excretions of sand trout would
Sand trout?
mix with water to form a pre-spice mass. The mass would then be brought to the surface of the desert through an explosion of pressure, and under the intense heat of Arrakis, melange would form. When the worms died, sand trout would be released into the sand, and the cycle of creation would repeat.
What the fuck?
Sand trout are the larval form of sandworms.
So a sandworm has to die to leave its larva behind?
Apparently,
That doesn't make sense biologically,
you
but
want to you want to talk about weird stuff in the Dune books that doesn't make sense? Look up Leto Atreides the second sometime.
oh God. What the hell?
So Leto Atreides the second is he Paul's son or
What the
grandson?
fuck is that?
He
Is he part sandworm?
he he becomes a human sandworm hybrid,
Jesus
I
Christ.
believe, by ingesting a sand trout.
I mean, this thing is very disturbing.
Yeah, there are a number of like illustrations of him, and it's just weird.
This makes the Baron in the new movies look kind of tame.
Yeah. So this the shit gets kind of crazy in the books from what I
Absolutely
understand.
terrifying. Wow. That's absolutely terrifying looking.
So hopefully we'll get to see that in
Oh,
future movies.
goodness. All right. My last negative I had is you can argue with me on this one because I know you like the new
Uh-oh.
one. But this movie in particular, and I feel like in the new ones too, like why does it have to feel so oppressive on like everything? Like the tone in these movies is just so sterile and dry. I get it's a desert planet, but you don't have to literally make that the tone of your movie. I don't know. It just feels like there's no characters I'm like particularly rooting for in these. The universe is just it's weird because it's like detailed but bland. It's like a board game that has like a theme that has nothing to do with what you're playing.
I don't know.
But you really like the first one, right?
Yeah, I love the first movie.
And this is not about that, but like, what do you love about that? Is it the actors and the performances, or is it the world?
I mean, part like all of the above, also just honestly the filmmaking itself. I think it's just a beautifully made movie.
Okay.
I think Denis Villeneuve is a genius.
I guess I could see it
And
from like a filmmaking aspect.
yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from, and I do kind of agree. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much of that is down to the source material. And like, I think the first novel was written in like 1964 or something. And I don't know. I feel like a lot of earlier science fiction was more kind of dry, and there wasn't necessarily a lot of concern about character development and things like that.
Hmm.
So I don't know. My guess would be that it just comes from the source material, but I mean, I do see where you're coming from.
It's just kind of like and again, like it's a choice with how you present this stuff, but like and maybe in the new one I plan to watch part one again before I watch part two coming up here, but
Yeah.
I saw on somebody's website too, and apologies, I can't think of where I read this at, but somebody said even like Lawrence of Arabia, which is a much older film
Yeah,
set in the desert. Like the desert is presented as beautiful and the shots are wonderful and like it's alive, like it's a place, like it has its own personality and it's not just this like depressive place that everybody's featured on in the film. And like this one just kind of
yeah,
feels like, which I go back and forth because I mean a desert is both beautiful and like a place I would definitely not want to be stuck at or living on, but
not at all.
just seems like there's a way to make it, I don't know, more cheerful or give me more people to cheer for in the movie. Like, I don't know. Do I care if Paul lives or dies? I don't know.
That's fair.
You know?
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think one of Frank Herbert's inspirations was like Arthurian legend. And I mean, I do agree the way everyone acts like in these movies, in the novel itself, presumably, there's like it's like very stilted. It feels very kind of like a very medieval formal kind of
Yes.
sensibility. Whereas I was just thinking, I mean, like I think part of why Star Wars was probably so successful and people loved it so much is that Star Wars is kind of swords and sorcery in space. Like in a lot of ways, it is also kind of the Arthurian legend. But the way the characters behave and interact with each other, especially amidst like a group of heroes, they behave in a way that is more modern to like, the time that it was like they joke with each other, give each other
Yeah.
shit. And like, I feel like that is a more modern sensibility that you don't really see in a lot of like earlier chivalric works.
That's a good point, I think, because the characters do seem to be contemporary at that time. Like even today, like if you go back and watch the way like Han Solo and Chewie and Luke and Leia like interact with each other, it's not that different than how we interact with each other.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah,
loose, it's
exactly.
informal, but yeah, I see what you're saying. Like this is almost more like a 60s stage play. Like everybody's kind of uptight and this is my
Yeah.
role and this is hitting my lines and
Yep.
yeah, I could see that. That's a good explanation. Okay, you got any more negatives?
No, not nothing specific. I think I'm ready to rate it.
I just want to throw one idea out there I
Oh
had when I
boy.
was writing these. It's not anything big, but how do you think this movie would have worked if it would have been a part two instead of a part one? If we had had a part one before this that kind of explained the world a little bit more, showing us rather than telling us, could have maybe had some of Paul like growing up and like with his family and what that meant, and then have maybe like House Harkonnen interacting with like the Fremen on the planet while they're trying to mine, and then maybe a little more of like the politics behind the Emperor and stuff. I don't know. I just feel like if some of this stuff had been fleshed out before we came into it, and then we saw like Paul's story cross over into this story a little bit more, it
So
might have made.
you're basically saying, what if the Denis Villeneuve movies?
Well, no, because that I don't even feel like that has stuff before it though, does it? Doesn't that basically start where this starts?
I think it at least sets the stage a little bit more than this one does.
I guess it definitely slows things down because of the runtime compared to the other one. I don't know. I just had an idea of like if this had been a part two where this had
Yeah.
played out like, oh, here's this guy of legend and he's finally making it to the planet, haha, and like,
I mean, I see where you're coming from. I think the problem with that is I don't know how much like action would really be involved in that.
yeah, I was trying to
Um,
think of that myself. Because isn't there even another house? Like there's Atreides and the Harkonnen, isn't there like another one?
yeah, I think there
Aren't
are
there like
even
four
maybe
or
a couple
something?
more. Yeah, I think there are at least four.
I don't feel like we really get them in there either. Houses in Dune. Bom, bom. Oh, there's a lot of them. Holy cow.
There are several houses. Holy cow.
I guess maybe this is with all the expanded stuff.
Yeah.
Oh wow, he has like 8 or 10 major houses alone.
I mean, I feel like there is probably enough that you could dive into that it's like you have to draw a line somewhere. Like I believe they're actually working on a TV series that is supposed to be coming out either later this year or next year that ties into the current movies and like
Hmm.
further. I think it's about the Bene Gesserit, so like kind of builds that out more.
Okay.
And I feel like the world is big enough that you could just like keep building it out and building it out, but at a certain point you kind of have to you don't want to end up with the Star Wars prequels, you know. You have to try to figure out what era, what plot is the most interesting to try to tell the story, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah, this is a big world. You could do a lot with this, but I don't know.
I just realized
Oh,
we need to do a new podcast now. Battle of the Sandworms.
Beetlejuice?
Is is it Dune? Is it Beetlejuice? Is it Tremors?
Tremors.
I feel like there
Ooh.
have to be other examples.
Yeah, I'm up for it. Let's do it. We can do wacky monster matchup.
Yes.
I like it.
Anyway,
Anyway, wrapping this bad boy up today. You want me to go first? You want to go first?
I'll let you go first.
Okay, I'll go first on this one. I can't say I didn't enjoy watching the film because I did think it was entertaining in its own way. Um, Definitely were some problems here and there, as pointed out with all these negatives. Pacing, I think, was really hurt, but sounds like behind the scenes some decisions were made that I don't know. Can put that blame on just a person or two, maybe more of a team effort that kind of let down the final product in this one.
Yeah,
I did like a few things about the movie. As I said, some of the performances I really liked. I liked how complex the politics of the world seemed. I don't know that we got a full view of that. Like, basically, the plot of the movie, if you want to break it down, is like the Emperor puts the house he doesn't like on this planet so that bad things can happen to this house and he can destroy them.
pretty much.
Which is also not really shown in the movie, but yes. They're just like, we've received orders to go to Arrakis. We're gonna go.
Well, I mean, they do. We again get exposition from the Emperor. Like they basically tell us that that's what they're doing. That they're sending the Atreides is there so that they can then also send the Harkonnens there to kill them. Basically,
Yeah, it just seems like, I don't know, like there's why? What's the motivation?
now
It's like we need to kill this whole family. Why? It's plot.
the weird brainfish thing told them to,
Yeah, that thing was weird as
which
hell,
is
man.
also not in the book.
Really?
I think that being is in actually one of the later books, but it's not. It's like humanoid. It's not like a weird brainfish with a
Oh,
vagina
okay.
mouth that they keep cutting to for some reason.
That's a little surprising because that felt like we're trying everything we can to make this like recreate what's in the book.
No, it's just David Lynch being David
Oh
Lynch.
my God, that's surprising. It did look cool though. I gotta see the train coming in and the sides moving and
That was, yeah, that scene was cool. I did not need the repeated cuts back to its vagina mouth throughout the movie.
um I don't know. This was a fun ride just to see this. I've never seen it. Like I said, this is she claims it's one of her old school favorite movies, my wife, but
Really?
that's what she says. Has a really fond
Why is
memory of
she not
this
on this
movie.
podcast?
I don't know, and I haven't really talked to her since we watched it over 2 nights either, but we know the new series I have some issues with, particularly pacing and dryness again and blah blah blah
Boo.
blah 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 blah. But I did enjoy watching this. So score wise, even though score is not required here, I gave this a 5 out of 10.
God
And
damn it.
um I'm gonna label this one with a little bit of a heavy heart crap over classic. Again, I feel like if this was your movie that you saw in the 1980s and it kind of became like
Yeah.
something you loved, I could see how to you this would easily be a classic. Like it's just that thing you love. But I didn't, and I watched it later, and it's not so great. So 5 out of 10 for me, officially crap tonight.
It is with a heavy heart that I have the same rating Cody just gave.
Stop agreeing with me. We're gonna have to
It's,
change the
I know,
podcast.
we're gonna change the title of the podcast. I also gave it a 5 out of 10. I mean, I agree with pretty much everything you said. I could see if this was one of those movies like a never-ending story or, something that you just grew up with in the 80s.
Yeah, Labyrinth or
Yeah,
Dark
I
Crystal or
mean,
something weird.
listen, Labyrinth still rules. I'll fight you about
I
that.
didn't say it didn't. We can do a classic or
Yeah.
crap on that.
No, but I agree. Like, I'm sure a lot of people like it for nostalgic reasons. I do appreciate the David Lynchiness of it all. There were a number of things I liked about it, but overall, as a movie, it is kind of a giant train wreck, I felt like. I do think it might be more enjoyable if I partook of some melange before I watched it. Which is something I might do sometime. But yeah, I mean it's an interesting movie. I don't think I would really try to dissuade anyone from watching it,
Hmm.
but I would just maybe tell them to try to temper their expectations a little bit. I think it's an interesting experience, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's an enjoyable experience, at least not all the way through. So yeah, overall, I agree with you and I give it a 5 out of 10.
So is that a crap or a classic?
I mean, just kind of by virtue, the grading system, I feel like I have to say it's crap,
Oh,
but I feel kind of bad saying that. I think I have to say it's crap.
double crap tonight. Wow.
Double crap.
We haven't had many double craps. Little President's Day special here for everybody. Oh man.
Yeah, appropriate.
Yeah, there you go.
An
You,
appropriate amount of crap for President's Day.
do you rank it a Biden or do you rank it a Trump? Hmm. There we go.
I mean, definitely Biden.
I just saw something that said most voters think it's going to be Nikki Haley versus Kamala Harris now, and I'm like, a lot has to happen for that
That's
scenario to
not
play out.
that's not true.
I don't see that happening.
That is not
But
true.
anyway, well, regardless of all of that, I am still excited to watch Dune Part 2. And
The early reactions have been insanely positive. Like people are saying it's a science fiction masterpiece,
okay,
like
well,
an all-timer. So I'm trying not to let myself get too hyped, but I'm also quite excited.
I do have it here on my honorable mentions for 2024 most anticipated, right next to Arthur the King, starring Mark Wahlberg and a dog.
I believe I had Dune Part 2 as my number one most anticipated movie of 2024, and also
Ah,
somewhere in my top three for 2023 when it was originally supposed to come out.
yes, 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 yes. All of those things as well.
Anyway, it's my
Anyway,
birthday. I'm hungry. I need to go find some pizza or something. So
all right. Well, there we
let's get this
go.
spice flowing.
All right, ladies and gents, this has been the Fawn Pod, the Fawncast, and we have to ask Joe
Oh
if he
no!
had to spend a week on Arrakis with someone of his choice from the film, who would it be?
From
The
the David Lynch
1984 Dune
film.
film.
Ooh. Um, I mean, I'm tempted to say Virginia Madsen or Sean Young back in the day, but take the
Mm.
less creepy choice and say Sir Patrick Stewart.
Oh, good choice.
I mean, he seems like he has some solid survival skills, and he just seems like a cool dude to hang out with. So
All right, well,
me and Sir Pat Stew and his weird, terrible hair just chilling.
you're hanging out with Sir Patrick Stewart on Arrakis, somewhere up on the
Yeah.
rocks by yourself, on a little camping trip for a week, and he rips off his face, and it turns out to be Donald Trump underneath. What do you do?
Ah, boo. I mean, here's the problem. My first thought is let him slightly touch me inappropriately so I can then sue him, but he
Whoa.
doesn't have any money anymore.
Oh.
So I'd probably just push him off the rock and hope the sandworms get him.
That is the correct answer. You win on your birthday. There it is.
Yay!
Holy cow. That was exactly the correct answer. We all wish that would happen. But anyway, oh boy. All right, this old dog is another year older here. This is Joe, and I'm
Ruff, ruff,
Cody. There we
ruff.
go. This has been the Fun Pod, the
Oh,
Funcast. Friends occasionally, not disagreeing. We'll see you again soon, everybody. Take care.
bye, crap.